So while we're here at Leeds Town Hall, what do you make to it as a boxing venue?
It's great. Well, you know, this, first of all, I think it's kind of unique that a town hall has a venue like this in it. I mean, it's really extraordinary, and they have, I know, all kinds of events here. And interestingly, there was a World Championship match here. Leonzer Barber took on Tom Collins, who was a fighter from Leeds, many years ago in this venue. And so there's a lot of history to this place, even vis-a-vis boxing.
Are you excited to be here and be a part of the MaxiNutrition Knockout?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the tournament, you know, we're now into the semifinals, and it's very interesting. You know, we're headed toward 2 matches now that are going to give us the finalists in the tournament. So I think tournaments in boxing are really fun, and we love it because boxing's a sport where we don't often have structure. In fact, we never have structure in boxing, but tournaments do that. They give you a structure, and you can follow through as fighters move on. And in this tournament, you know, these fighters, some of them have shared history with each other, some not. I mean, a perfect example is Bob Agisafe, who's taking on Leon Sr., said, you know, I knew every other fighter in this tournament, but not Leon Sr., because he was out of action for about 3 or 4 years. So it's kind of interesting. He has to acquaint himself with him and figure out what's the best way to attack him. And yet he and Travis Dickinson have fought each other before, and they could be headed toward another match.
Obviously, you've just mentioned Agisafe against Leon Sr., that could be a tricky one. What do you make to Travis Dickinson against Matty Clarkson for the English title?
Yeah, you know, that fight on paper, if Matty Clarkson can raise the level of his game from the last match. You know, he won his last match against Lee Duncan, but he was the first to admit it wasn't really his best effort. I think conditioning was an issue for him. Time of preparation leading up to the fight probably wasn't quite what he wanted. And I think we may see a different Matty Clarkson, and we're going to need to, because Travis Dickinson fought very well in his opening round match against Danny McIntyre, probably one of the tougher matchups, or McIntosh, I'm sorry, one of the tougher matchups in the first round. And so it's incumbent on Clarkson to fight better in this fight, and I think he's going to. And I think that for Leon Sr. at 34, this is his last stand in the sport, so he's going to give everything he can against Bob Agisafe. Now, Bob is the favorite in the tournament. He's seeded #1. Dickinson's seeded #2. But we've seen in boxing many times before, the form doesn't always hold true.
On the undercard, we've got a fighter a bit closer to home for you. We've got Eddie Chambers fighting. Obviously, he's fought Vladimir Klitschko for the titles. What can we expect to see from him to the UK audience that might not know that much about him?
Well, you know, Eddie Chambers at age 32 was once a heavyweight who challenged. He fought Klitschko for the title, lost in the 12th round TKO. And Eddie Chambers had been a contender for a long time in the heavyweight division. Now he came out to spar with Tyson Fury, probably had 1 foot out of the sport. But being around Tyson Fury and Peter Fury kind of encouraging him and taking him on as a fighter has kind of encouraged Eddie Chambers. And now he's living in Manchester, and he's had 2 fights on the comeback trail. And so we're going to get to see him in a 3rd here on Channel 5. And I think it's interesting. We're monitoring how Eddie Chambers is doing. You know, he moved down to cruiserweight briefly, which actually I thought was going to be a good weight for him, but then I think just realized probably heavyweight was where he had to be. He's 32. Heavyweight's mature later in life, so certainly reasonable for him to take another run at the heavyweight division. When he was doing well as a heavyweight, he was a very good boxer who threw a lot of punches. But then he got in some of the major matches he got in, he wasn't a volume puncher. And he has to be that if he's going to be effective, because he's not a huge knockout puncher. He is smaller than some of the bigger heavyweights. So he's going to have to put punches together again, get back to where he was when he did that.
We've also got on the bill former WBC World Light Welterweight Champion Junior Witter. What do you know of him?
Haven't seen, well, yeah, I've announced his fights before. I haven't seen him lately, and I know he's kind of trying to make his way back into the world title picture. But Junior Witter, every time I did his fights, obviously he is the prototypical Ingle fighter with the switching and the good defense and all the rest of it. So he's a very difficult man to fight, and would be a difficult man to fight no matter what age he is.
But just going back to the MaxiNutrition just finally, obviously this is to decide who makes it to the final. The final's in September.
Right.
Do you think that this is a platform, a show that should go on for many years to come.
I like it a lot, and I would like to see it in any division. And what I like about it is too, you know, the 8 people that were matched were all in the top 10 in the British rankings, and so what we got to see and what we're getting to see is kind of a, you know, sorting out of the light heavyweight division here, and I think that's always fun to do. And there are a lot of divisions in the UK and in Great Britain specifically, in England, that have good fighters from 1 to 10, and it would be fun to see how they stack up against each other. And you know, if they're going to fight domestically, why not in a tournament where then the winner gets a chance to move on, and also titles are at stake while these people are fighting. So we're seeing titles change hands domestically while we see these fighters fight for a bigger prize, which is winning the tournament and moving on maybe to world honors.
With these tournaments, obviously, you say, reinvigorates divisions, it gets titles changing hands. Do you think it's important that we've got that and that sort of platform on a terrestrial TV channel such as Channel 5 in the UK, something that's free to watch for a boxing fan?
Oh, absolutely. And I think some of these fighters, you know, they would never get this kind of exposure. And a tournament lets you follow. We've been able to already follow some of these young men. We've tried to tell their stories, and as it gets sorted out and we get to the final, I think the 2 fighters that get there and the fighter that emerges from this will have a leg up on being already, you know, a well-known sportsman here in England.